Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call the board briefing meeting to order. Would like to welcome everyone here. Uh, This is a historic meeting, if you will, that we'll be going through today, and appreciate the efforts of all of the staff that have worked tirelessly over the last few weeks in putting the meeting agenda together and dealing with all of the issues that are out there. We welcome board members here. Welcome Juliet, who's participating with us virtually today. And I'll just quickly go down the line here and introduce board members that are present. And then Candace, you can introduce staff that are here. But our board members present, Randy Crozier, Jim Lemon, Norm Johnson, Wayne Anderson, Blaine Ibsen, Charles Holmgren, myself, Kyle Stevens, and then Juliet Tennert is participating with us virtually. So that's the introduction for the board members. Candace, if you'll go ahead and introduce staff members from the division.
Yes. Great, thank you. So today we have Joel Williams, Grant Doty, Tom Cox, Jacqueline Pacheco, Shalane DiBernardi, Marisa Egbert, Shannon Clowes here with us taking minutes. Thank you, Shannon. And our AV team in the back, Paul Gedge and Carmen McDonald are here. And then I don't see anyone else online. So I think that's all for today.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll have others join us as we're going through the process this morning. But again, welcome. As I mentioned, this is, we have a big agenda today, a long agenda that will take us, through late afternoon. And because of the public meeting notice requirements, we'll have to comply with some of the timeframes that have been specified in the public notice and meeting outline, even though we may or may not conclude a particular session a little bit early. If we do, we'll still need to wait until the designated time for the subsequent sessions to begin. I just would, as I mentioned, we're in some unprecedented time as far as drought conditions, water conservation efforts, funding that's been made available that we'll be considering today and on into the future regarding secondary metering and other conservation efforts. I noticed last night as I watched the news, I happened to be tuned into KSL, and they give a periodic water report update. And last night, Kevin Eubanks indicated that the water conservation efforts, that they're 16% below what the average has been based on this time, previous years. I think that's the way I understood it to mean. So there are some good conservation efforts taking place, but yet a lot more that needs to. So with that, we'll go ahead and go through the discussion items for the board agenda. And the first one on the agenda will be, well, first of all, let me ask if there are any, we'll go through the approval of minutes. Are there any items in the minutes that we need to call to the attention prior to the official board meeting and making an official action on the minutes? Are there any?
Look good to me, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Shannon, compliment to you then for putting those together, and we'll discuss that issue in the board meeting itself. Okay, so then back to the agenda. Committal of funds, City of South Salt Lake. Jacqueline, we'll ask you to come up and explain what's happening with that particular project. And Juliet, if you have anything you want to say to begin with.
No, I thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I think we're doing some it's really exciting to be part of this process. So thank you. Thanks to all the work the staff's done.
Okay, thank you. Jacqueline, go ahead.
Okay, so the board authorized this project back in June of 2022, and it was for 85% of the project cost, up to $8.5 million. This project consists of two projects. The primary one is to develop a new well, the pump station, and an iron manganese treatment plant. And the applicant is requesting that any additional funds be applied towards a secondary project of replacing some main lines. The $10 million wouldn't be enough to cover the whole project, and they understand that, but they are going to replace the remainder of the lines in phases, and they would finance that. There have been no changes to the project since authorization, so the cost estimate and cost sharing remain as authorized, where they're asking for 85% or $8.5 million from the Board of Water Resources, and $1.5 million is what their share would be, for a total of $10 million. And so the motion is there that the board commit 85% of the project cost up to $8.5 million, and the bonded indebtedness be returned at 1% interest over 30 years with annual payments of approximately $342,000, includes reserves.
Any questions from the board members? Okay. Juliet, where that's in your area, you'll be prepared to make that motion?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next one then is a special item. This is not only, it's an authorization and a committal of funds. And Charles, this is in your area. Any particular issues to mention?
Well, and Marisa, I'm sure, has a lot more background than I do, but just a couple of weeks ago, I got a phone call from the folks at Hodges Irrigation Company in Rich County, just above Bear Lake near Garden City. And they were in quite dire straits as their canal system failed. And I believe it was for the second time this year. And someone mentioned they call me to get information, and I'm sort of, I'm getting rustier all the time. So I'm not great for whipping information out to help them, but I told them, asked them if it was an emergency, and they indeed said it was an emergency, that they're without water. And I made some suggestions to them. I told them there wasn't any grant money available, but that we could loan them money. And I wasn't quite sure if we could get it on this agenda or not, but that we had a meeting coming up very shortly. So they contacted Marisa and Shalane and got things going there. That's my part of the story.
He then commiserated with them when they sent pictures of the canal. And so we'll have those pictures during the board meeting of that. So they've got about a 600-foot long, 600-foot long wide part of the canal that has failed in Garden City. You can see there's actually, I'm not quite sure what's down below, if it's kind of a tent area or what. There was one picture. It looked like maybe a glamping KOA or something. I don't know, but it failed in May. They tried to fix it. It failed again in July, and so they're looking to put about 700 feet of pipe in. Apparently, and I found this out later. Apparently, before it failed in May, someone, I don't know who, was up there doing work with the backhoe. So they could possibly shed a little more light. With them, we are actually going to have them, we're going to treat this like a typical project where they can come up and, ask questions. So it'll be different than all the secondary meters. So they are expecting the cost to be about $435,000. Then they got that from the contractor. So they actually had already talked with the contractor and gotten information from them. It's very lump sum-ish. But they're looking at $435,000. They do have an engineer involved. And so the loan would be I'm on the wrong page right now. Loan would be for $370,000, and that's 85%. We're going to do it out of the revolving construction fund. So they are going to get 0%. We gave them 25 years because they are not going to gain anything, any benefit. They're just going to get back what they lost. So the payments are approximately $14,800. And I think that's it.
Marissa, is this just a stopgap measure for them? Are there other areas of the canal that are going to need to be looked at?
Yeah. I don't know that there's really any other problems. I'm just looking at this. They, where did I have it? Let's see. It says the project will improve the flow of the channel, help the company prepare for future piping projects. So they already are working on some things where they're planning to do some piping. And so I think that was part of it, is why don't try to fix it again. Let's just stick some pipe in because we're going to come back anyway. I don't know exactly how that's going to fit in though. So that would be a great question to ask them. And they will, my understanding is they will be here in person today. It's Norm Meekum. He's the president of Hodges Irrigation. So it's up there in Garden City. Yeah. Any other questions I may not be able to answer?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to mention that this is similar to the Jordan Northern Canal that failed probably almost 10 years ago. I was just new on the board at the time, and there have been some construction work done underneath that canal similar to this one that created a real situation where the canal dropped out from underneath them, is my understanding. I haven't been on site.
And I haven't either. And that is one more thing. They did say that they're trying to see if they can't, they're trying to get this paid for by whichever group was doing the work in that area before it failed. So I don't have a whole lot of details. This was very much a, this was very much a hustle to get this going. So I don't have all the details, but the pictures tell a lot of story. So
The map, it's hard to depict
I know.
the topography, but is it going along a hill, the edge of a hill, or?
You know, I could
It's hard to
quickly share some photos.
We do have photos, it'll show it is.
Yeah, I got to think for a second. Sorry, my brain's slowed down the last few weeks for some reason.
In the photos I've seen, it looks pretty steep.
Yeah. Dang it.
It's not precipitous, but it's.
No, but it's ominous. I mean, you look down, it's like there's stuff right there. Just trying to make sure which one it is. Shoot, sorry. Okay, this one.
I was just trying to visualize in my mind because I've been up there.
Now let's show you.
And noticed, I mean, by the looks of where the canal is, it would appear that it would be back up against that hill that goes along, through the valley there.
Mhm.
Did it do any damage, bro?
I don't know about that. They didn't say anything. They didn't, they didn't say if it did or didn't. I would imagine if it were significant, they would have said something. Okay, so now I got to share this. A window or a tab? A window. Okay, there it is. Okay. All right. Oh, fetch.
I got it.
Okay, sorry about that.
Technology's great when it works, and when you're under pressure trying to make it work.
Well, we actually have two PowerPoints. So-
From the photo, it looks like it's going across an old alluvial slide just by the photo. The way it shows, that would be my guess. And so it's probably just an underlying slip sheet there.
Oh, I've got them in the email. There you go. So I think that's the July. If you go up higher, it'll show what happened in May.
You can see the slope.
Yeah, there's a better picture that
Oh,
shows
yeah,
down below.
There's a pretty steep, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's pretty
So that's in May.
shooting down.
And then they did a fix. I don't know much about that, but apparently they fixed it and it lasted to sometime in July. So not much. So
So what is the diameter of the pipe? I didn't,
48-inch.
48-inch. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't put that.
Hmm.
Yep, it's a good size.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Marissa. With these few pages that we have in these books, it's hard to keep track of the agenda. Get back to the, I know I need to dog ear it or something. Okay, so those are the only two items to be discussed today, correct? The only
The only
two
two regular,
regular items to be
projects,
discussed
yes.
today.
that is correct.
Thank you for clarifying that. So,
Then we have an adventure.
okay. So are we at that? We're at that point in time where you can begin to lead us on that adventure,
Okay.
Shalane.
So I'll tell you what Marisa and I have come up with the plan, and you can make suggestions if you don't like what we've come up with, or recommendations or modifications. With 70 secondary meter projects to consider, we're creating basically an opening statement to share at the beginning of every session, because we have broken it into 3 sessions and we have invited specific applicants for each session. So the first session to be held along with the regular board meeting or the regular projects at 10:30 to 12:30, we've invited the Bear River applicants and the Weber Davis applicants. So Charles and Kyle's areas, I think they total 32 or 3, something like that. We'll try to consider in those first 2 hours. But at the start of each session, we'll make this opening statement, kind of summarizing some of the requirements, how this money came about, and why this is important. And we're also going to mention a couple of things, just so we don't have applicants ever able to say, I never knew that. You never told us we had to do that. We've put in here that, yes, your meters have to be able to communicate with each other, and then you have to agree to educate your consumers. So some of those things are going to be in this opening statement. And then our plan is to have, well, we've had project managers covering projects all over the state, rather than present their individual project to you, because as I was discussing with some of the board members this morning, the projects are pretty much the same for the most part. The differences are where they're located, who's sponsoring it, the number of meters. So we're going to have each of the project members take an area, or in Grant's case, 2, because Norm and Jim's areas add up to 6 applications total. So Grant's going to get to do both of those. And we'll present the facts to you all at once. And we'll say this applicant plans to install this many meters. They expect to conserve this much water, total cost of such and such. And then they'll read the staff's recommendations. And we'll just go through your whole area. Kyle, lucky Kyle with 21 applicants. We've actually broken yours into 2. So Tom and Ben will each take about half of yours. And then once we've gone through giving you the facts and staff's recommendations, then we'll ask you to make just blanket motions. I think most of you I've provided those to. If I haven't given you something yet, let me know between meetings, and I'll get that to you. And we're thinking that if you can just basically rattle off the list, move to authorize and commit secondary meter grants, and go through the list according to staff's recommendations, that will get us the legal authority that we need to enter into contracts with these folks. I just want you all to be aware, we have, in the process of our investigation, we have come across a couple of weird things and had some questions pop up. So if you've looked at any of yours and have questions that haven't been answered, we're happy to answer those. You might see that some aren't getting 70% grant. Why is that? Well, maybe they max out at their, they're getting the most dollar they can. So maybe they're getting a higher loan amount than others because we're willing to provide funding for the share that isn't covered by the maximum grant, that sort of thing. But so that's how we're going to do it. And I will note there are a couple of changes, not huge. We're actually, Juliet, hope you don't mind. Of course, you're the one home not feeling well, but we're going to bump you to the very last so we can do Norm and Jim's together. Okay, thank you. Instead of doing one, then you, then back to the other. And so we'll present them in that manner. And the one change to what was in your packets in the board folder, Browns Meadow, it was in the report, it states it's only up for authorization, but they do have an engineer and they have prepared. And so we've added them to the authorize and commit list.
And it's near the end.
Yeah, it's in Juliet's area, Browns Meadow Irrigation Association, I think is their name. So just to note that one. So yeah, I forgot to mention that. There are several who haven't worked with an engineer yet. And that's one of the requirements, is to have a licensed professional engineer sign off on this. And so if they haven't, all we're asking you to do today is authorize grant funds. We're not going to commit it. We aren't going to contract them. We'll bring them back to you for committal. Possibly next time, we'll see who fights us on getting an engineer or who actually does what they're supposed to. But so there are some that even with grant funds, they're only up for authorization today. And most of the loans that we're presenting today, secondary meter loans, are only going to be for authorization. There is one exception. It's in Kyle's area, Davis and Weber Counties Canal Companies. If you guys remember, Rick Smith's been very involved in this process, and they've worked with us, this board, a number of times in the past, and they are ready to go. So we're going to authorize and commit. We're going to recommend that you authorize and commit both grant and loan today. So does anyone have any questions, general questions? Yes, Kyle.
Are each of the applicants going to be given an opportunity or expected to take the opportunity to speak to their project?
No.
Okay.
We have told them they have to be here, whether in person or virtually, basically to acknowledge receipt of whatever the board does. But we have not invited them to speak.
Do you anticipate any of them wanting to do that?
We did have one email who also worked with us a lot and also asks for special treatment quite often, who said we might ask for different terms on our loan. And we said, not today. Not today. We're just authorizing. And by the way, secondary meter loan guidelines state 1%, the repayment term will be 5 years less than the warranty on the meter. So unless
that's
you
not
can
one
get a
that-
better than 20-year warranty,
That's not one in my area, is it?
it is. That's why I'm looking at you, Kyle.
I can guess.
So we have told them that they shouldn't be asking for anything today. Yes, Candace.
Thanks, Shalane. One question that we did have is how to handle introductions. So I have a Google sheet that Marisa has provided me. So I think it's probably appropriate for us to try to introduce those present. And I've asked staff to help fill in that Google sheet as people are coming on or doing things. So I will try to announce everyone that's here so we meet that the requirement that they are here in person.
Yeah,
Any other thoughts?
Yeah,
on
we
that?
did also ask, just so you're all aware, because we didn't want hundreds of people logging on from various devices. We did ask them to have one representative present or gather in a single location and log on. And so Marisa was super excited when one of the engineers called and said, I'll have 4 in my office.
Not 4 people, 4 projects.
4 projects. Yeah. So, yeah, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, and so Candace, I haven't had a chance to really say anything to the staff about watching as things come online. So I'll be working on that too. But for the funding managers, if we talked about trying to have laptops here today. For those that have laptops, can try to keep track of who's chiming in.
Yeah, no.
And I would say, that what they can do is go on. Let's see, let me just look at that list real quick, how we've got it. We've written in some names already. Maybe we could highlight them in green if we know they're on so that you can see. And, like for some, I know I've got one that said they're going to be in person, but then late last night they said, well, can they be virtual? So we'll kind of see how it goes. I will say a lot are going to be online rather than in person. So.
Okay.
Oh, and not only did we not invite them to say anything, we actually pretty much disinvited any comments, even thanking us for how amazing we are or anything like that. So
Save it for later.
Yeah. That goes without saying. Shalane, would you share with us ahead of time the statement that's going to be read before each session starts?
Sure.
So that we are aware of what that.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Would you like to hear some of it now, or you just want me to print it out and you guys can read it through at the break?
We have time. Go ahead. And read.
Okay. Okay. Here's what I wrote last night about 9 p.m. and Marisa hasn't had a chance to review it yet. So, but here's what it says so far. Utah is one of the driest states in the nation, one of the fastest growing, and drinking water sources are limited. In addition, potential climate change impacts and the current multi-year drought in Utah threaten water supplies and put public drinking water supplies at risk. Municipalities and water companies need to reduce their water use to stretch their existing drinking water supplies. Many Utah communities also have secondary water, typically used to irrigate lawns and gardens. Secondary water is not treated to culinary standards and is utilized throughout the state to protect the drinking water supplies. However, many users waste this precious resource because they do not realize how much they are using. Technology has improved over the last decade and allows for the metering of untreated secondary water. Individual water use cannot be measured without metering, so water suppliers have begun installing meters on their secondary water connections. By educating their customers on their measured use compared to the amount they should be using, suppliers have seen as much as a 20 to 30% reduction in use. Secondary metering, combined with conservation and education, protects the drinking water supplies and allows drinking water providers to plan for their future growth. House Bill 242 states that a secondary water supplier shall install and maintain a meter of the use of pressurized secondary water by each user receiving secondary water service from that supplier by January 1st of 2030. The legislature provided $250 million to the Board of Water Resources to help providers meet that requirement. The board may issue grants up to 70% of the project cost, but grants are limited to $5 million for providers with 7,000 secondary connections or less, and $10 million, did I say 5,000? 5 million, and $10 million for providers with more than 7,000 connections. If the board provides grant funds for a project, the secondary water supplier must submit or update a water conservation plan for its service area and obtain approval of that plan from the Division of Water Resources staff. In addition, meters purchased with grant money shall allow for data communication between the meter and other devices designed to manage use of secondary water. And the secondary water supplier must agree to provide an educational component to each end user, either in a monthly water use statement or a customer-specific internet portal. This educational component must promote water conservation and provide information on the customer's secondary water usage. So if there's something else you'd like added or changed,
My only thought,
Paragraphs are in every.
pretty much in the report.
okay,
Not the second one, the first big one.
the only thought there was that the funding was made available through the legislature through ARPA
ARPA
funds.
funds.
And based on that, those are some of the restrictions that we have to meet
Right.
in order to, this is being fast tracked, but at the same time, these funds have to be committed and used by.
Right. I thought about that last night after I shut off my computer.
Okay. That was just a, additional thought, I guess, to help emphasize the fact as to why we are moving at the speed we are moving and the fact that they need to be done. Projects have to be completed by 2022. It's not something that the board
Right.
or the division or legislature has imposed on us. That's being imposed on us by the original source of the funding.
Yes, I will add that the legislature provided $250 million in ARPA funds to the Board of Water Resources. And then after stating the limits of 5 million and 10 million based on number of connections, I will say these funds must be contracted by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. So that will help clarify that. Yes.
And was the cap of 5 and 10 million included in the legislation, or is
Yes.
that an administrative?
No,
Okay, so
that's in the law.
In the law as well.
Yep.
Okay.
The educational component is also in the legislation.
Right.
The water conservation plan, which we're requiring, is not in the legislation, but it's in the board's rules. And so just a heads up, there's a lot of these applicants have never done a water conservation plan because they're not required to, especially the small systems, or they've never come to us for funding before. So we are working on that. I just want to give a shout out to Shelby Erickson over our water conservation section. She has been going over these water conservation plans, and we have a Google sheet with tons of information about everything going on for each report, and she's been updating that. What we asked is that everyone have a draft submitted by July 31st. And a draft meaning it doesn't have to be adopted because we knew they may not have time, but a draft at least. We do have some that have not been able to get it here by July 31st. So what we're doing is we are proceeding with the motion of authorize and commit for those. However, the contract, they will not get a contract from us until that gets turned in and approved. And Shelby's doing a great job moving on those very quickly.
Have you had a lot of pushback on that requirement?
I don't know if some of the funding managers want to talk to that. Yes, there has been. We gave them, pun intended, a watered down version, but because there's really no requirement. And then we actually went into it and worked with Shelby and really simplified it even more, especially for these smaller systems. If they're over 500 connections, they've got the regular requirements. But for these, we're talking some systems that have 40 secondary connections. So we really simplified it quite a bit. Like, we didn't want to know their gallon per capita day. We figured that might be a little bit out of their realm. So, yeah. But there's been pushback, but they won't get a contract unless they do it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Other board member questions, comments?
Yeah, comment, Mr. Chairman, Marisa or Shalane. I've been handed some suggestions on motions to be made, and my first group is for authorization and commitment. The second two groups are only for authorization.
Yes, that's correct.
So I
You,
need to be careful when I
yes,
read
yes,
that.
the wording needs to be very specific. And so, yeah, look them over before the meeting, make sure I did them right, because there's a lot of them. But yes, the ones in the top group are the ones who have been working with an engineer and they are prepared. We know that their cost estimates are good ones. The others are entities who don't really want to pay for an engineer, and so we're not ready to commit those grants yet today. We want to know that they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing and not just trying to get free money without meeting all the requirements that are in the law that go along with the grant funds.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
That raises a question then in my mind a little bit, where we're authorizing and committing the grant funds. That's the first part of the motions that'll be made. And then the second one is authorization for loan funds,
Yes.
where they get authorization and committal of the grant funds. Are they able to move ahead with any
Yes.
portion?
Yes, they
Okay.
absolutely are. They won't have, the loan just requires more, there's more legal requirements that we have to meet if we're going to do either a purchase agreement or especially a bond for a municipality. There's a lot more legal things involved. The grant is pretty much a contract with us that they'll agree to do what we said, what the law says they have to do. And so as soon as we authorize and commit these grants, can get working on contracts. And so they'll have some funding available. The loans, they'll know it's at least authorized. And as long as they work through their legal process, those funds will be available. We should be able to bring a bunch of those back to you in September for committal of funds.
But if they move through the process and for some reason they are not able to meet all the requirements for the loan portion of that project, they'll still be able to implement the grant portion of it, and then we'll have to come up with their own
Yes, that's correct.
funding mechanism for the balance.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why we're always very clear in our staff recommendations and our motions about percentages. You may notice as you look through some in your areas, and I don't know which ones, some of them aren't getting 70%. Well, it's because maybe they have other grant funds, or maybe they hit that cap and don't quite get there. But so we aren't going to just, they send us a bill. Okay, I got my first bill. Here, send me a check for all of it. No, we'll pay the percentage. Whatever percentage is committed by the board, that's what we'll send them. So that's what, one of the questions leading up to this, people were like, wait, so do I have to spend all my money up front, or can I, once the grant's been committed, will I get a check? No, neither one of those is how this works. Once you have a bill, you submit that to us and we'll send you a check for the percentage of the board's share.
And let me explain that a little bit more. We have a process in the office when we get invoices where we have a form we fill out and get to Randy. And that form for most projects is just one reimbursement request. But in particular, like on dam safety, they have a grant and a loan. That's two process for us. We have two different reimbursements on that. One for the grant specifically at that percentage, and then one for the loan at that percentage. We'll be doing that same thing. So for a while, they may, especially like on those that have to bond, and it's going to take them a few months to get that set up, they'll be getting the grant at the percentage that's in that the motion is set for, and what the contract will be with them. So we will do the contract for the grants. And let's say it's 60% just for the grant. We'll go 70%. And then, 70%. When they send those invoices, we'll do 70%, reimburse them for the $10,000 they send in, we'll reimburse them $7,000. Now, when the bond comes on, they will need to resend those invoices, those exact same invoices, to get now the, let's say 25.5%. They still are going to have some of their own cost share going on. So, and some of them are going to be their own contractors, particularly these smaller systems. And so what we told them is that, they said, can that be part of our, what's the word they like? In kind. And what we say is it's not necessarily in kind. You actually have to submit some sort of invoice as if a contractor would. And so that's something, and that's where particularly those smaller systems where we really want an engineer involved, helping them out with that. Not just, sign and stamp and seal a typical detail of how they're going to install, but actually help them keep track of those sorts of things. So I hope that makes sense. And the grant money has to be spent by the end of 2026. The loan money will still be going if they need.
Okay, other questions? Whoops.
Break coming in.
Okay, anything else, Shalane or Marissa?
Maurice wondering if you'd like to go through district by district to address specific questions. If you have, I know some of you didn't get a chance to look at your projects until this morning. So if you want to take a couple minutes, we are happy to address anything. We will say that we have created a PowerPoint, not with 70 slides. Again, 1 or 2 for each area, and it will have a table that lists similar to what you have there, but it will also show for your area the projects, the conservation expected, the number of meters, the total cost, the grant amount, and the loan amount, if there is one. So then you can look at that slide and see at the bottom the totals for your area.
Okay.
So we will have that in a PowerPoint.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I ask a question?
Sure.
So it's not, I didn't have a chance. I told you that I was going to kind of go through and kind of look, because you sent, and by the way, again, I know everyone's saying, oh, thank you. You guys have done an incredible job of bringing all this together. I didn't have a chance. I was going to kind of go and compare total cost to the number of meters and kind of look at that ratio. And I didn't have a chance to do that. But just kind of from your perspective, can you tell us a little bit about why that kind of per meter type of a estimate might vary a little bit?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Great.
Yeah, and first let me say, Candace has kept track of everything. So in her review of projects, she's entered it all in a spreadsheet, and she has. And that was one of her big questions when something would pop up. Why is this cost per meter so high? And I think we saw that a few times. And others may have different ideas, but to me, it seemed like the highest ones were some of the smaller systems.
Okay.
And it's simply because one, they don't have the accessibility that some others do, these larger to get their meters. But I think really it's the adding that electronic communication component into a small project really adds up fast when you're talking per meter cost. If it's 30, 40 meters and you're still having to have some sort of data communication between the meters and the devices, that's costlier per meter when you have a small system.
No, that's a great,
So,
I thank you for that explanation. And that actually makes me just even more excited and really grateful for, the legislature for allocating these funds, because really those projects just would have probably not penciled out.
Right. And so, Candace had something else she wanted to add.
Yeah, I want to mention, one of the other areas that we saw some higher meter costs were those areas that maybe had bigger meters, right? Like they were putting in, they had an institution, not for agriculture, but for, municipal type of uses. They had a bigger meter that they needed. We did see some of those costs rise higher. I did not break it up into each of your districts, but I'm happy to share this spreadsheet with you. Generally, the average cost per meter for the whole was about $2,500, like taking the total cost, all the bells and whistles, not just the just the purchase of the meter cost, but the whole project cost over the number of meters, it was about $2,500 per meter.
That's installed.
That's the whole thing. That's on average for everything, which is very, in my opinion, I was surprised by that a little bit. And that's probably because some of the areas have, you know, already a lot of infrastructure in place that they could do it for less, some of the bigger systems. That being said, there were, you know, the range of meter cost, of the total project cost divided by the meters, you know, varied anywhere from like $1,100, and I saw ones upwards of $9,500, depending on all of those different variables, the size of the system, what they had in place, what projects they were putting in, what meter sizes they were putting in. So there is a big range, but overall the total was about $2,500.
So is that $2,500 surprising high or low?
You know, I think maybe a little on the low end for me. We were estimating, you know, roughly $3,000 on average is kind of what I've been using in kind of calculations from the conversations I've had with, you know, bids that are coming in and those type of things. But I think a lot of it just depends on the area.
Yeah, I think when we very first started talking about this last year, I think we were all thinking, yeah, it'll be somewhere between 2,000, 2,500. And then as we started to see the amount that was going to be available grow and the number of applications that we would have and how many meters we were expected to install, and we're going, there's not going to be any meters. Prices are going to skyrocket. Well, you know, we should probably say $3,000 or $4,000. And so I think to have it come out to 2,500, it's like, oh, well, good. That's more like what we were thinking last year instead of what we were starting to doom and gloom ourselves with this year.
So back to the recommendation to go through each section to help us understand a little bit better what we have till 10:30, right?
10. You've
So
got to
till
break at 10.
Well, we don't want to cut out the break. So we have till 10.
And I do have a list of some where there's been some adjustments, and we want to make sure we all have the same numbers. So
what's your pleasure on?
do you have specific questions on any of your specific projects?
No? Okay.
Can I add on the costs too? Like, talking about the variance, and I can't remember, it's a city, they have to put a tower in, and the tower is not cheap. It's a huge piece. And so that's included in this average cost that Candace has been keeping track of. If you like numbers, you're going to geek out over her spreadsheet completely. But
Juliet.
yeah, Juliet's, will you hurry and send that to her, Candace?
I'll send it right now. I don't want to distract you.
Yeah. So Draper Irrigation, for example, already has that system installed, so they don't need to worry about that. I've got South Weber Irrigation Company. They've got a smaller system, which, by the way, the board funded their actually pressurized system, so it's kind of fun to see that come full circle. But they are collaborating with Weber Basin Water Conservancy District and bouncing off their tower. So it's things like that. I know the Weber Basin group, and is it Weber Davis Canal Companies? There's a big group up, Kyle, up in your area, and I think that's where you have so many projects where they got together long before this ever really finalized the legislation. And so they are working together. So I know with South Weber, he goes, oh yeah, they said they throw our meters on their list to purchase. So they're hoping to get a lower price by having so much more. So we're getting some help to some of these smaller systems from some of these bigger systems. It's been really cool to hear some of that going on. That's also part of our concern about not having an engineer up front. There was pushback. And so we said, okay, we'll just authorize, not commit. And the reason is because some of those came in quite low. And my concern is that cost is going to go up, not because an engineer is going to add a huge fee, but because an engineer is going to have more of a actual cost. That being said, some of those systems, again, are putting in their own meters. I do have one system up in the North Logan area where he said, well, I have till 2030 to put in these 50 meters, or I only have till 2026 to use your money and put them in. He said, I'm just going to go till 2030. Then I don't have, and because there's not as many, the educational component, there's not as many requirements if they don't take the grant money. So that was a choice that he made. And then he doesn't have to hire an engineer, all those sorts of things. So anyway, that's some of the little nuances. And I can go over some of the things just to make sure we all have the same numbers and such. Anything else? Sorry, before I dive into that.
I think the board book should be accurate.
It should have. Okay. I just wanted to make sure we should talk.
Let's go over
Okay.
just generally. I mean, we don't have to go through each project report, but maybe let's just look at the project summary and make sure
Okay.
everything's looking good. If
So we'll
that's
start
okay
with the
you,
first
Mr.
one.
Chair. Okay.
And did you talk about each funding manager that they're going to present?
Yeah.
The block.
Mhm.
So Russell will be presenting the first Bear River. Will be presenting that first block. And this is going to be after we do South Salt Lake and Hodges Irrigation Company. And then Shalane's going to give that blurb and talk about that. And then Russell will be presenting all of those projects. And so Bear River, I don't know if there's, let me see. I've got one, Center Hyde Park. We just want to make sure, Charles, on that it's authorized and commit 70% up to 91,000. So I want to make sure you have that on your summary.
And
Go ahead.
let me just explain why we're doing this real quick, because some of these summaries that I sent to you, you saw some of them came out Sunday, some of them were Monday. And there were some things that I had missed that we fixed since then. So we just want to make sure you have everything that you need now. So we want to make sure Center Hyde Park is actually on your list.
And let me say, when she says she missed, we're talking 7 projects out of 70 where it's not, I mean, there's the report, there's the summaries, there's the, so it's a lot of stuff that could have been missed that absolutely was not missed. And she's taking tomorrow off. Please do not call her. There are no emergencies for her tomorrow. Call me if it really is an emergency. Board members are allowed. So the next one is in Kyle's Weber. It's Hooper. We mentioned they wanted to talk longer terms. Go ahead, Candace.
Sorry.
Okay. And so Russell let them know we're not having that discussion today. And if we're going to have that discussion, it could be another day. Now it's on the loan portion, which they're only getting authorization today because they have their laundry list of stuff to do. So it could be discussed between now and say if they're coming back for committal of funds in September. Although Russell did let them know that this is the secondary grant or secondary meter, 5 years less than like Shalane said. So 15 years on that. So there may be, Kyle, I don't know if there might be phone calls, discussions, just a heads up to you, but not today.
Okay.
That's part of the reason we're not necessarily inviting them people to speak, because it's not something that has to be done today anyway. Loa Town, just so you know, it was kind of messy and it came in as Loa Town and Waterworks or Loa Town Waterworks. The Waterworks does not go on the name. It's just the town of Loa or Loa Town. So that may have popped up somewhere. We tried to catch all of those. Is there on there?
It's not here.
So that's on, sorry, Blaine, that's yours. Okay. Horseshoe irrigation, you already know about this, Blaine. Just give you all a heads up. We're not going to discuss it in the board meeting. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, where are you at? Are we still in Weber River?
I'm sorry, no.
She's bouncing around.
Sorry,
Will
I'm
you
jumping.
let us know?
I will let-
We
I
have a
will let it
very
know-
big
I will let you
board
know.
book that we're
So,
trying to flip
Hooper, did I say that right, Russell?
Yes.
Hooper? All right, so Kyle, that's yours. So now going to Blaine in Sevier.
Well, before you leave that,
Oh, okay.
the one when I asked the question earlier, it was one that started with an H, but it wasn't Hupper. So
Oh, okay.
Someone else.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. And I would say maybe Kyle, you're the chair. If someone jumps in and starts speaking, leave that to your discretion on how to temper that. Is that a nice way of saying that?
Sure.
Again, on the loans, the only one getting committal of funds is Davis and Weaver Canal Companies. The rest, if there's any questions about them, can be handled when we get, because they have to come back in another board meeting. So, okay. So now for Blaine's. Loa Town, it did, the application came in as Loa Town Waterworks. Waterworks does not exist. And I'm just going to give you a heads up, and I'm going to let Shalane and the attorneys figure this out. The water rights are under the name of Loa Town Waterworks.
No, Loa Waterworks.
Loa Waterworks, not even town, Loa Waterworks. Loa Waterworks is an expired company. So the water rights in the report are Loa Waterworks, but that they are used, what they told us, they're used for the town. So I don't know the legalities of that, and we don't take title anyway. We do a bond with them, so for their loan. So I'm going to let Shalane worry about that later. Shalane, Stephen, Bill Brader, the attorneys. Okay, still in Blaine's Horseshoe. So the report says, is it $700,000 grant?
It's $1 million project.
$1 million project, $700,000 grant, but they called and because they did get a Water Smart grant. They've got, this is the one in Spring City. That's right. They got a lot of grant money for a lot of water projects, and it sounds like $700,000 for secondary meters. So what we will do, it was so late in the game, we left the report the same because the report says up to $700,000. If we go with the $1 million and they get $700,000 from the Bureau of Rec, we subtract that out and we do 70% of $300,000. And so we will worry about that when we do the contract. But they did make us aware of that. So our amount may go down to 220. They may ask for a loan, may get a loan also. We're going to go ahead and just move with the motion as it is today, and we can adjust things as we need to. Okay, switching to Jim's area, Hurricane. This one's,
Which means there was nothing in Wayne.
oh yeah, nothing in yours, Wayne.
No problems.
Shalane did not mess up any of yours. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing her because I know how many hours she's been working the last few days. So Hurricane application, the application said 1,429 meters in 2021. And then it said that they're requesting for 1,460 meters in 2020, because that's what it'll be in 2023. So I talked to them, and it sounds like they're going to be annexing in some neighborhoods. So the discussion was that, and this is in the legislation, they have to be in service on a pressurized system to the end user of the system by May 2nd of this year. And what I said was, they're not part of your system then. And so we can't count those. We left the report at the 1460. It's something we'll work with and deal with as we do reimbursement. And I will say there's going to be a lot of, you know how you put your quarters in to get the can of Coke out of the fridge, and sometimes you don't always have it and you do it later. It's kind of the honor system. There's going to be a lot of honor system in this process. And so, but we're going to do the best we can when we receive invoices to take care of that. Still in gyms, we're going to Leeds. I can't remember what's in the report anymore. I think I updated it. It came in as 120 something connections. They actually have 150. So the cost estimate went from 400,000, which the original report had 400,000, to 520,000. So Jim, do you have it at 520,000 with a grant of 364,000 on your motions, or where? Yeah.
He doesn't. The summary.
The summary. So just for everybody's sake, it's 520,000 total cost estimate with a grant of 364,000. And I think it should be updated on the report online for sure.
I kept looking for that on the other page. Okay.
Yeah, it would,
Oh, you don't have any paper in front of you at all. What are you talking about?
yeah. And we don't, yeah.
Books and newspapers and everything else.
And can I just add that, well, I guess I'd be violating HIPAA. Shannon was extremely sick the last 2 days and still came in. We tried to get her to stay home. She refused. So she was printing like crazy the last couple days. And we still kept trying to kick her out. And we're really grateful that Landley was helped her out yesterday with a lot of that. Okay, did you find the leads?
Yep.
The summary sheet? Okay.
Here, let me see.
It's in that book.
Just ahead of Canab irrigation.
It's on the back page instead of the front page like most of them are.
I was just thinking
On the break here, on the break, we can get some of those little
Little sticky
sticky
tabs.
things and we'll bring those down and then you can tab things. Sorry, it wasn't tabbed.
We're dog earing them.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yes.
That's why we're doing this. Yep.
So this should be the board water resources range should be 364.
But he's not gonna make that specific motion. He's gonna just do what staff.
Right.
Yeah.
Staff will make the correct
Staff will have
recommendation.
correction, so he doesn't
Exactly.
need to-
So you won't have to say anything, but just so we know your summary sheet is correct.
What do you say?
confused to the
higher level.
That was a very last minute one that came in at the end of last week. Yeah.
Well, I believe the information printed in the report is correct.
The
Um,
report's correct.
we
it was
just don't
that
have the summary.
Motion.
Yeah.
in the report.
We'll get that.
Which is why we're doing this. And then the last one is just Browns Meadow. Those are the only changes that might affect something. I don't know if the funding managers have any other things that might.
Could you go back to Browns Meadow? What
Yes.
was the
Browns
change?
Meadows and Juliet's, that
Yeah.
it's authorization and committal of funds.
Okay.
The
So
report
Juliet, that's
says
yours.
Authorized only.
Yep. So, but it's authorized.
Yeah.
and commit. Thank
And
you.
we fixed it for the online report.
Yeah, and then I have it in my motions correct, right? So,
Yes.
yeah.
And Ani will be presenting all of yours, Juliet, and she has that information. So let me just kind of go back and let you know. So Charles, Russell will be presenting all of yours. Kyle, is it going to first be Ben, then Tom?
Tom.
Tom first. We'll do down.
11
Yeah.
through Syracuse.
And then you'll do a motion for those. No,
It's one motion for.
I lied.
Nope.
Ignore
Tom
me.
will stop. You will do after Russell makes
Yeah.
his presentation of the whole area, then you will do your motions for your area. Then we'll move. Yep, 3 motions for you. Then
Not
we'll-
out of the book.
That's right.
Not
One at a time, hold on each one of these.
Yeah. Right.
And then we'll move to Kyle's area. Tom will make his presentation of the first 11. Then Ben will come up and present the other 10. Then we'll have the motions for the entire area. So while we broke them up as far as presenting, we're still just lumping them all together for actual motions. Then we have a break.
Are
And
they gonna be-
Blaine is going to make the motions for my
For you.
area.
Yes.
Will they be seconded? Will each separate motion, each of the 3 motions have a second and a roll count?
Yeah, and a vote. Yep.
And a vote.
Yep. Each motion will act as its own. It will just cover a list of project. So, yeah, so you might have 2 motions, you might have 3, you might have 4. Somebody might have 4. I can't remember. But yeah, we'll handle each area And then, so then the second session, we'll start with Blaine's area. We'll start with our opening statement again. And Marisa will actually read it for the second session because then she gets to present Blaine's area summary. We'll move on to after the motions are made for Blaine's area and voted on, then we'll move to Wayne's. Jacqueline will present the summary for Wayne's area. So once she's presented everything, then we can have the motions for Wayne's area. Hopefully we're done by about 3:00. Who knows? Maybe we can move really fast and you'll just have really long breaks today sitting around going, dang, why did they waste so much time? But we're trying to make sure we allowed enough time and still get things done efficiently. So our final session is scheduled to start at 3:30. We'll start Grant. Is Grant doing Jim and Norm?
Yep. Jim and Norm first.
Jim and Norm at 3:30. And so, but of course he'll make, which are you doing first, Grant? Do you know? Jim or Norm?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do Jim's area first. There's a 4-project summary. Grant will give that.
And then Grant needs to let
And
the
then,
motion go.
yep, then we'll have the motions for Jim's area. Grant will continue with presenting Norm's. We'll have the motions for your area, Norm. Yep. And then we'll move finally to Juliet's. And Ani will be presenting the project summaries for Juliet's area. And then we'll have that one final vote for the Salt Lake Tooele area. So yes,
Aye.
Blaine.
Just a logistical question. In between these sessions,
Mhm.
we need to have a motion to
Oh.
just what?
Pause it.
Oh,
Pause or
break? I don't know. It's been so long.
Recess.
No, don't need a, not to break?
Not to break,
Okay.
okay. So.
But we'll still announce it
Chairman can do that.
Yes.
Recess.
Okay.
We'll take a
until such.
Recess.
We'll take a break until
we'll be
such.
back in.
Yep.
How
Thank
do
you,
we-
Blaine.
How do we handle the request for public comment?
So just so you're aware, I just checked because we said public comment online would be open until 9 a.m. I just closed it and we got no comments online. So we have none of that. Today,
So,
um,
do I need to ask the question, are there any public comments or can we
You-
just?
you can make a statement at the beginning of the meeting that we received no public comments online. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
We have asked today, we decided to do something, and like we're not doing everything a little different. We decided instead of having Randy chase people down and try to fill out these papers and who are you with and do you want to comment and all of that, and then walking up and handing them to Candace for whoever might be in the room, we've got a sign-up sheet at the door. And so we're going to ask them to simply state who they're with, what their name and title is, so we can announce them as here. I think we do need to take the opportunity at the end of each session to ask if someone in the room wanted to make public comment. Yes.
Question, does that have to be, I think, is it before the motion that we have to have a request for public comment? Marty, do you have thoughts on that, or just public comment for the whole session?
I mean, you'd ask for public comment or a motion, but.
Okay.
I think it is, you can be in the meeting is that we solicit a public comment online regarding all of the matters that are.
Well, we've got that. We know there's no online public
I'm
comments.
just saying to announce it. get them
Oh, okay. Okay.
And that we did not receive any.
Okay. But for people in the room, I'm thinking, and as you mentioned that, Candace, maybe it is wise once the staff gives their summary for the area, before we actually move to motions, Kyle could ask, are there any public comments regarding the projects in the Bear River District? And
Public comments or?
Comments.
I would think public comments, because the applicants have been already told that they really shouldn't say anything today.
Anything changes from that request?
So I think it's simply are there any public comments regarding the projects in this area? And if someone says there are, I think you need to make sure that we state that you're limited to 2 minutes or, whatever.
So I'm confused because we're making a statement up front that we have not received any
Public comments online.
Online. Okay.
So this is
Is
for
there
people
anyone
in the
public-
room.
Is there anyone in the public here that would
Yes.
like to make comments?
Yes, I think that's what we need to do for people, because our website, I think the rules all say that people can make comment online or in person.
Now,
So-
if they're on the phone, like Julietta's, whatever, is that in person?
I guess that's in person.
Well,
I don't know. I mean,
we are not-
anyone that types anything into the comment feed, that's becomes a part of the official record. So,
The Google Meet, however, is not for the public.
right.
The Google Meet is for the applicants, we hope.
Mhm.
That's how we've sent it out. Do not share. This is only for this. The public watches online on YouTube. And there's no way to make comments through that.
So if you want to say something, Marty, hop up to the mic.
Sorry, I may have confused things because when Shalane spoke about the online public comments, I thought that was it. And so I thought at the beginning of the meeting, we could just announce that. But if we are going to accept public comments on each block of applications, then I think at the end of that presentation, you'd see if there's any public comments, any discussion, and then go to a motion. So if we are allowing people to speak here, then that probably most appropriate place would be right after each block prior to the motion. Does that make sense? Okay.
And I think we have to allow people to speak if they really want
Let's
to.
do it right, so we don't have to do it. again.
Right?
I'll just clarify that we've not received any online public comments. Is there anyone else in attendance
Regarding these projects.
regarding this project would like to make comments? So.
The Open and Public Meeting Act requires you have open meetings. It does not require you have to take public comment, but wise policy when you're involved in things like that. So I think it's always good to let people speak and express their concerns or support. So I'd say, yeah, let's do it unless it got really excessive and crazy.
Ron, you can have 2 minutes. Or you can have a 2-minute limit or
right.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And on our fancy phones, we have stopwatches.
I cracked mine.
I think that's everything. And I say I think.
For the project.
Shalane and I thought yesterday was going to be a kickback day. Yeah, it wasn't.
We were wrong.
So I would like to say, let's see if we've got, Ben was having some car problems. Ben's online. I would like to recognize specifically, we've got, you know what, I'm going to ask them to stand up. They don't have to. But we've got Russell Hadley, Tom Cox. We've got, where are my people?
Jack.
We've got Jacqueline Pacheco, Ani Baynard, Ani, and then we've got Grant Doty, who went to see if Landley's around.
Oh.
Grant's coming back. We've got Ben online. Just all the work they have done. We like to say, oh, this is what we do all the time. No, things were very different. The requirements for the grant were very different. Just how the board meetings having to be set up. These guys have been great. And I even had Grant and Ani last night contacting me saying, hey, I see something different between the summary and the report or something like that. So they were catching things, our rookies here. Grant and Ani have never done this before. So when they present today, this is the first time ever they're presenting about motions and that sort of thing. So yeah, so we just want to appreciate everyone. And I want to talk about Stephen. Stephen, I don't even know what he did to put all that stuff together. Stephen Gregerson. There's Grant. Grant, we just talked about you, how you're a rookie today.
So now you're a pro.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely. He might one of his projects might go from grant only to now a loan. So he might learn how to do a loan. Stephen is the one that, like, I don't even know what he did. He put all the stuff together somehow. This is before I was heavily involved in this. And so I didn't know all the workings that was going on in the back, but he's got this thing called a data scraper. I don't know. And it's putting everything in. Yeah, Juliet's getting excited. Do you have that shared with you too, Juliet?
The data
Okay.
scraper?
Yeah, and it's got, it shows all the different areas and pie charts and all kinds of
Awesome
geek out
tool.
stuff. Yeah, to help us keep track of things. Candace and Joel and Shalane all worked over the weekend to finalize reports. And I'm talking over the weekend because those three have nothing else to do. Again, Shannon has just been a rock star for us on this. And we really appreciate that. Am I missing anyone?
Yes, Marisa Egbert, who jumped in as project funding manager and basically got thrown in the deep end and head held underwater, and go for it. Someone who,
still like me, I think.
well, and she took her kids on vacation and didn't use an hour of leave, just so you know. So that's, she may have been teleworking from California for a while, but she still got her time in. The reports were finished. They were routed.
This irrigation took place on the side of a pool in Santa Rosa, California. And it was a glorious day. And I was more than happy to talk to Claudia Condor at that point.
So I will say it's definitely been a team effort. It's been quite the process with all of us at Water Resources, and you board members. I am so impressed that all of you are here today. Juliet, I'm so sorry you can't be in person. I know you wanted to be, and we would have loved to see you in person. But
yesterday, I'm like, I'm still testing positive.
I'm beginning to think I should have just stayed on the mountain.
Randy's looking at it going, what did I get myself into today? But we are so grateful that you're here and ready to tackle this. And yeah, it could be a marathon day, but I mean, we were talking earlier this week and we are doing something historic here. And I think we're all excited to see where it goes. And I mean, even if we get through today, we're not done yet. This is, this is the beginning, but I think we all have this anxious excitement going on right now. And so, yeah, Marisa, this is why I had to hire a replacement for me as funding manager so quick, because this was coming. So thank you, Marisa.
And I don't want to forget a couple other people. Poor Marty. Marty's in his office working on who knows what Colorado, like, I don't know what and I walk in and we kept walking in. Hey, Marty, we got to know, how can we do the motions? Hey, Marty, we got to know what happens if this. Hey, Marty, what about it? What does end user mean? Hey, Marty, what is, and he's been amazing at getting us answers. I think almost all of them have been within the day. And I mean, he's doing other stuff in the middle, and somehow he's jumping back and forth between those different things. Randy Staker does have about 110 different ways to say no today, because that's about how many motions there are. I'm just kidding. Randy has been a trooper too. I wish he could hear this right now, because he's yelling at me over text message that I haven't gotten something to him yet. But if this is being recorded, he can watch this. He said, "You're killing me, Egbert. Where are the sign-up sheets?" So anyway, Randy has been fantastic in helping us out too. Anyone else? Michael is getting stuff out for us in the media, he sent us talking points this morning. So there's talking points that we can share with you. If some of you get interviewed, you might get interviewed by the news if you want talking points. Who else?
I don't know.
Rachel Shilton for giving up 2 of her people. And then in managers meeting last week, she said, well, now that that's over for them. And I was sitting back and I go, well, and Shalane said, no, not quite. So she gave up a couple of her people. We've just had help from all over. Todd Stonley's not here today. Todd Stonley wondered if he really needed to help review to try to, speed up the process by not having yet another reviewer. And Joel said, but you catch all those little things. And sure enough, he caught a lot of those little things. And so it's just been so much work by a lot of people. I know I've missed someone. Jed Bowl will likely be at the board meeting around 11:45.
Well, as I stated from the outset, that's been a heavy lift for everybody involved, and we appreciate the extra time and effort that everyone has put in to make this happen and to bring us to this point. So we'll go to the next item on the agenda then, and that is information to the board.
Great. Thank you,
Candace?
Mr. Chair and members of the board.
Information there.
Well, so we are going to try to keep as much as possible our information to the board and director's report and everything very concise today, since it's going to be a long day. I did want to make a couple of introductions, and I think I only see Jack here. Jack, why don't you come on up? Jack Hinsman is our new GIS analyst. He started July 26th. And was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, and has attended the University of Cincinnati, graduated with a BS in environmental science and minor in geology, moved out here after graduation in 2018, did some intern work at a sister agency at the Division of Wildlife, and we were able to snag him. And he was hired as part of the appropriation we received to get help with secondary metering and all the funds that were appropriated. So he's going to help us collect all of the information regarding the systems, the secondary suppliers, how many connections they have, boundaries, to really kind of fill that out. Because a lot of times we get asked, how many connections are there? And to be honest, it's an estimate because we don't have great numbers, but he's going to help us get there. So, Jack, do you want to share anything with the board? We're excited to have you. Oh, do you mind?
No, I have nothing to share. Thank you for the
Okay.
introduction.
Oh, great. Well,
Except for a last name.
Heinzman.
Heinzman. Sorry, I said Hinsman. Sorry, I said it.
Everybody does. It's fine.
Heinzman. I got it. Great.
Well, I think with his background from Cincinnati, you can always come to Bear River City and find a Procter and Gamble plant.
Well, welcome aboard.
Great. Thanks, Jack. Great. And Landley is also a new addition. Come on up, Landley. She is our new administrative assistant. She started July 11th. And she was born and raised in Logan, Utah, and moved to Salt Lake City about 10 years ago. And she went to school at Salt Lake Community College and got her associate's degree in geography and a certificate of completion in GIS. We are so excited to have her on our team as well, and happy to have you say anything or if there's anything I missed as part of an introduction.
No, that was perfect. And I'm just really sorry.
No, you're good.
No, that's perfect. And I'm really excited to be here. And thank you so much for having me. So great. Thank you.
Well, welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're excited to have those two new additions to our staff. Shalane, are you prepared to do a status of funds?
Sure. And just to be perfectly open and honest here, when it comes to the revolving construction, the C&D, the City Water Loans Fund, I cannot guarantee the accuracy of these numbers right now. This was actually my first time trying to pull these numbers together, and with all the secondary metering stuff going on, I didn't quite have the time to focus on this that I wanted to, but I think these numbers are pretty close for where we are right now. Of course, the big thing was adding the secondary meter grant money to this status of funds, and I knew today that's what everybody would want to see. So as you can see, that's a whole new section that takes up how many pages? And so we're starting the day with $250 million available. We're asking you to commit grant funds in the amount of 188 million plus. We're asking for authorization of grants in just over 1.5 million. Oh, and actually, yeah, that'll be a little bit different because that 189 for Browns Meadow will be in the committal instead of the authorization. But if you'll look back to the C&D page, you can see I've added, I kind of wanted to keep most of them separate. Since the secondary meter loans will come from the C&D fund, there's a whole list of those up there as well for authorization. So I did put Davis and Weber County Canal Company into the regular committal of funds to be presented today. So it's counted up there, the just over 3.6 million. But I kept the secondary meter projects to be authorized all separate. And you can see the rest of them come to about $47 million in board funds. So it's not just grant money that you're working with today. There's plenty of loan funds as well. Are there any questions on the status of funds?
Help me understand on the secondary meter projects authorized on the loan part of it, 47 million total funds authorized, remaining funds available with the parentheses end of year balance if all listed projects were fully paid.
That's for the whole C&D fund. That's not just these projects.
Okay.
That's the entire C&D fund. Yeah, so that includes all those Provo City projects that are currently authorized but not committed. The other projects that like South Salt Lake that we're asking you to commit funds for today is coming from the C&D fund. So yeah, that's that ending balance is for the C&D fund. It's not, because you don't have money specifically set aside for secondary meter. I mean, we discussed this in the past. It used to be $10 million a year. As you can see, yeah, we're far exceeding that today. And you said this board has said they're okay with that they're good with funding more than $10 million a year for secondary meters. So that's where that is while I kept the project separate for authorization, it still is in the Conservation and Development Fund.
Okay. That was just a little confusing for me anyway.
No problem. Yeah, there's lots of different sections there.
Looked like it was the summary for that section. And
yeah, gotcha.
Not all of them.
No, and the 47 million is just the secondary projects that we're asking you to authorize today. We've got another, what? So we've got with South Salt Lake and Davis and Weber, we've got another 12 million that we're asking you to commit from the C&D fund today.
Right.
So yep, you go down the list and it gets smaller and smaller. That available balance gets smaller and smaller. If all projects get funded, that's where we'll be in the C&D fund.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Any questions for Shalane on any of that information? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. A couple of other things to note during this busy time, and I'm glad Ben's online so I can give him a shout out. Ben Merritt, with the help of Tom Cox, submitted a FEMA dam safety grant application. So as we've discussed in previous board meetings, we have a lot of need as far as our high hazard dams in Utah and not enough money to satisfy all of the needs that we have. So as we've talked, we are going to submit a building block to the legislature to see if we can get additional funds appropriated for our high hazard dam safety program. But in addition to that, we are looking to leverage the federal funds that are available. So there, as part of this high hazard grant funds available through FEMA, there's about $22 million is the big pot. And that's kind of split up into two categories, design and construction, as well as, design and planning, and the other one is construction. We submitted 9 dams. Well, Ben did all the hard work. He submitted 9 dams to go through that application process for the design portion, the kind of planning and design. Granted, if we get any of those grants, the dam owners will have to go through those federal requirements to get that money. But we are trying to leverage those federal funds as possible to help offset the cost that we're seeing for our high hazard dams. Another element that I want to kind of highlight. So over the year, as drought conditions have persisted, Great Salt Lake has continued to drop in elevation. One of the issues that has arisen because of that is the salinity in the South Arm has continued to get more salty, and not in like a crass way, just a little saltier. And so the legislature appropriated $5 million for preservation of Great Salt Lake to go to two categories. One is to change make a modification of the berm. So there is a breach in the causeway about 150 feet. And to increase the height of the berm in that breach area, so there's less north flows moving from north to south. So that hypersaline water in the north arm, to try to keep as much of that. We didn't completely dam it off. We raised it 4 feet. So there's still a certain amount of flow that can get over the kind of top 2 feet, but to try to hold that really salty water back, to make sure that the south arm doesn't get too salty because it's impacting the health of brine shrimp and their reproductive ability. So that project was, and I have to give a huge shout out to Eric Dixon, one of our design and construction engineers. He's done an amazing job of getting that project through the procurement process and then through construction. They started last week and finished last week. So it was a very quick project, and it was fairly simple in the idea of just moving rocks to raise the berm within that breach area. But that project has been completed, and so hopefully we can alleviate some of the issues as far as the salinity in the South Arm. One other thing to note on that appropriation is this last week, the Great Salt Lake Marina has pulled the rest of the boats out of the marina because it is so shallow as the lake has continued to decline. And so we are working with part of that appropriation with state parks as well as forestry, fire, and state lands to dredge an emergency channel 40 by 6 feet, to go from the marina into the lake so we can use it for emergency access to the lake. We're not looking for it to be a public resource. It is only if there was emergency on the lake that we can get boats out there quickly. If not, then we have to go all the way to Promontory Point before we could get emergency boats out there, which is problematic, where we have a big flyway over our Great Salt Lake. So those are all efforts that are ongoing. But wanted to mention those. And then one last thing, as far as I wanted to get some feedback for you for our next board meeting in September. We also have our tour. So on the 14th and the 15th, on the 14th, we had planned to have our 75th celebration as well. We did run into a scheduling conflict that there is a water task force meeting, which has a lot of the folks that we would want to invite as part of the water community to our 75th anniversary. And so I wanted to get feedback from you if you want to go ahead and hold the celebration at the same time as we were planning, or if we should reschedule potentially in October to work with the schedule a little bit better. Just wanted to get kind of your feedback.
So are you talking about changing the board tour from September to October, or just the celebrations?
Just this 75th celebration. Yeah, the board tour and the board meeting would remain the same, but it would just be changing the 75th anniversary celebration.
Do you have a date you're looking at in October?
We potentially talked about October 4th, or in conjunction with the board meeting on October 27th, I believe. Is that the right date for? Yeah, 27th. Potentially we could have the board meeting in the morning and have a celebration in the afternoon. but I want to get feedback from you. Joel and I were wrestling with this, and so I thought I'd just bring it to you to get feedback.
I guess my initial reaction would be to, if you're looking to try and get as much participation as you can, and it's going to be limited by some conflicts in September, then it makes sense to move it, to October. But
Yeah.
that's just my
For what it's-
thought.
For what it's worth, my preference is October, just because I'm sure I'll talk to you about this. I've got some conflicts in September, but again, that's me personally. Don't schedule around me. But if my preference would be October.
And either October 4th or the 27th, do either of those.
I prefer just on a regular board.
Okay, on the 27th. Okay. That,
I can't remember when Water Users Summit date is.
I can, it's the 18th.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's not.
That wouldn't be yeah, we wouldn't have a conflict with that. Great, well, that's,
So it sounds like the recommendation would be to move it, to the 27th.
okay, that sounds great.
Is that the consensus of the group here?
What is your schedule for that celebration? What time of day or what are you?
Well, what we had planned was in conjunction with the tour, so we'd have it later in the afternoon from 2 to 5. But depending on what the board agenda looks like, I think I would still prefer maybe in the afternoon, that we could maybe have the board meeting in the morning, briefing and board meeting in the morning, and then have, a celebration. Depending on what the board agenda looks like, we will still have some additional secondary applications coming before us, but not nearly as many. And I can brief you on that as well.
As early in the afternoon.
Sure.
For those who travel.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay. Well,
And if
that's
we needed
super
to
good.
move the board meeting up to accommodate that, based on the volume or the amount of work that would need to be done in the board meeting, we move it up, to accommodate an afternoon activity as well. So
Awesome. That's great. Well, that's super helpful. Thank you. We will work to schedule that. So we're still, September's the same as far as our tour. We will adjust our tour schedule a little bit with this new information, and we'll make those details as well for the celebration in October. And then one last thing I just wanted to share with you, we did go through our second round of applications for secondary metering grants, which compared to our first round, it feels like the hype is a little low. We only had about 10 applicants, so that closed the end of July. We had about 10 applicants, and the applied for amount is about $12 million. So in theory, with the current information that will be before the board this or in just a little bit, and the next round of applications, we still have funds available. So we will look toward opening a third round soon. We haven't set the dates for that though. So we'll kind of go through that process and see where that goes.
given that information, will there be consideration given to increase the cap amount? Because I'm sure some of those that have, requested the full 10 million, that's not going to fully fund or meet their needs. So is there going to be consideration given for that?
That's a great question. So one of the things that we have done, so we received, the board was appropriated this secondary metering grant funds in two different pots of money. One came in a special session for about $50 million in 2021, and the other $200 million was appropriated in the 2022 regular legislative session. Yes. And so what we had done is we developed rules very similar to what the statute has laid out for that 50 million, but we do consider those two different pots of money. So generally speaking, we see that the maximum amount between these two pots of money, so the 200 million and the 50 million, could be 20 million for the large water users and 10 million because they are in two different pots of money. That being said, we are working with a number of legislators on potentially increasing that amount, especially if we get any new appropriations for secondary metering.
Well, and can I just note too, you may have noticed, I think it's most obvious probably in Kyle's area where you have several large projects maxing out at that 10 million. You may notice anyone who's getting 10 million, most of them have the same loan amount as well. And it's because what we did is we said, okay, how much of the project will this fund? If we max them at 10 million, that's 70% of what? And so Tom actually suggested this initially, said, what if we just said, okay, that means the project cost is 14 million, whatever, that gives them a loan amount of this. And so then those applicants can come back and say, okay, now we'd like another shot. So we aren't funding their entire project to meter everything. We said, we'll just consider this much of your project and fund 70% of that so that they can submit a second application for that second pot of money. So
that's all I have for the board today.
Okay, any other items to be brought up in the briefing meeting? If not, we have an extended break time because the general board meeting will start at 10:30, correct? So,
Kyle, I've got
Yes.
just one comment. It's nice to see Joel on with this House Bill 168 the other day. I think was glad to see you involved in that. So thank you, Joel.
okay. With that, then we will recess until 10:30. And I think you've made arrangements for some, okay.
Actually, this would be a recess. We're closing this.
Well, closing this meeting and yeah, this will conclude the briefing meeting and we'll start the board meeting at 10 o'clock. Thank you, Blaine. Okay, thank you.